Today we're going to look at factoring out a greatest common factor. We've worked with greatest common factors many times, going back probably as far as maybe 4th or even 5th grade when we worked with fractions. And we did that to simplify fractions. We're going to use that again now to simplify polynomials. Let's just have a quick recap of what we mean by factoring with a greatest common factor. So if I had a fraction of 9 divided by 24, we could factor this, or we could divide the numerator and denominator by the greatest common factor in order to simplify the fraction. In this case, the numerator and denominator have a GCF of 3. So we would divide the numerator by 3, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. And we divide the denominator by 3. 24 divided by 3 is 8. We even did this year when we had something like x to the 5th over x squared. And what we were really doing here was dividing the numerator by factors of x. We know that we could divide by x twice, and this would leave us with x to the 3rd. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about finding a GCF. So in our first actual problem, we're going to factor out a numeric factor, and then we'll see how we can check our answer. So the problem is 12x plus 20, and we want to factor out the GCF. So we're looking at what do the 12 and the 20 have in common here. They have a 4 in common. So I'm going to divide both of those by 4. And if I divided both of these by 4, I would be left with 3x plus 5. So 12x divided by 4 is 3x, and 20 divided by 4 is 5. You can almost think of this as undoing distributive property, which is really what we're doing. So let's just have a check to see if our answer is correct. I'm going to redistribute, so 4 times 3x, there's my 12x, and 4 times 5 is 20. So we know we did it right. Let's look at another problem. We have negative 100r minus 20. We want to factor this out. So you might be thinking, well, they have 20 in common, okay, or 10 in common, or 5 in common. They have a lot of things in common, but we want the greatest common factor. In this case, we can actually factor out a negative 20 because both values are negative. So I'm going to factor out a negative 20, and that leaves me with 5r plus 1. So let's just check here to see if that answer is correct. Negative 20 times 5r would be negative 100r, and negative 20 times 1 would be negative 20. So we did this correct as well. So fairly simple, just looking for the greatest common factor and undoing that distributive property. All right, let's try to identify some algebraic factors. So we want to find the GCF of 9ax and 8ba. At first glance, it might not look like they have anything in common, but they do. The GCF here is they have a factor of a in common. So we're going to say the GCF is a. And that's it. That's that problem done. Let's look at another one of x squared y to the 4th plus x to the 5th y to the 6th. We want the GCF of this one. So we're just looking for the greatest common factor. We're not trying to undo distributive prop or anything, just what is the greatest common factor? Well, when I look at the x's, I have an x squared next to the fifth, so at most I have x squared in common, so I'm going to pull that out. I'm going to do the same with the y's, y to the fourth and y to the sixth. At most they have 4 y's in common, so I'm going to divide out a y to the fourth, and that is our GCF, x squared y to the fourth. Let's try to now factor out with algebraic factors. So we've got the problem of a squared minus 3a. We want to factor this completely. So we're going to do basically what we did up in problems 1 and 2. The GCF here is a. That's all they have in common. So we're going to undo distributive property by dividing both of these by a. And that would leave me with a times a minus 3. And we can check that answer by redistributing it. So a times a is a squared. A times negative 3 is minus 3a. So this is indeed our answer. The last problem in this video is 18w to the fourth minus 27w squared. So we're looking for the GCF of this. What did both terms have in common? Well, between the 18 and the 27, the largest factor they can be divided by is 9. Between w to the fourth and w squared, the largest factor they can both be divided by is w squared. So our GCF is 9w squared. So we're going to divide both of these by 9w squared. Well, 18w to the fourth divided by 9w squared would leave me with 2w squared. And 27w squared divided by 9w squared would leave me with just 3. So I don't see any other greatest common factor, so I know this is done. So let's check the answer. We'll redistribute just to make sure that we get back to the original problem. So 9w squared multiplied by 2w squared is 18w to the fourth. And 9w squared times negative 3 is negative 27w squared. Our answer was correct. This is our answer. And it's done. So that's the video for today. Again, email me if you have any questions or you'd like to redo the task for an improved grade. Have a good day, guys.